This past Monday was World Oral Health Day. So you will find that the ministry, the Department of CPS, has planned a month-long series of events in partnership with various organizations such as the Sister Basilia Center, Mental Health Foundation, Ujima Foundation, ASA Foundation, and others. I'd like to give a big up to our dental health coordinator, Miss Irma Gums-Knight. She's done a wonderful job putting together a program. And it's a program that's very much geared towards education and focusing on the youth, trying to make sure that they develop lifelong habits, good habits, including obviously how to take care of your teeth, your mouth, your gums, your everything, as well as a proper diet, trying to reduce the amount of sugar that you're consuming, which is obviously bad for your teeth. So again, I encourage you to get involved. You'll find that there's a number of activities geared towards that this month, and you'll find the dental health bus will be out there. The services of the dental health bus are for free. I know that many people have a problem because dental care is not covered under your health insurance policies. So again, we encourage you to be proactive, get out there and take advantage of it. Thank you very much.
I want to be very, very brief in my report this morning. As you know, there are certain positions that are deemed under the law to be confidential positions. And those positions, whoever is appointed to occupy them is subject to a screening process. And the screening process requires that they have to pass the screening process. If not, they cannot be appointed. With that in mind, we had discovered that the directors of the central bank, who were managing directors, as well as the president of the central bank, had never been screened before. So that was picked up, and the screening process for them was started. Two of the managing directors of the central bank passed the screening, one did not. And the one who did not is Mr. Trump. As a result of that, Mr. Trump will not be able to occupy this position. He has, of course, the ability to file an appeal against the final decision from the VDSM, so that has to be awaited. But it leaves us confronted with the following situation. The two managing directors who passed the screening, one will be, because of his age, be up for retirement the middle of this year. And the next one will also be at retirement age at the end of this year. It means that we have to embark on a search for managing directors and a president of the bank, of the central bank, which is not an easy task. But we have discussed this, the Minister of Finance of Curaçao and myself, and we are starting the process to make certain that the central bank will have people at the top run the bank who is able to provide the services that our countries need. Thank you very much.
My first question goes to the Minister of Education, Minister Jacobs. Based on a number of Facebook posts that I've read over the past week, led me to ask you a question. Does students or the Department of Education send tax marshals after students that do not pay back to their scholarship? Has that ever happened in the past?
Good morning, Bibi. We have recently started collecting, and I say we, government, over the past maybe 2 years or so, started collecting, sending out the letters assessing what students owe, so they receive a notice. Students are, let me go back. Students are supposed to report to study financing office when they finish study, or if they've terminated their studies, and that usually ends then the funds that they get. If they fail to meet the requirements in terms of reporting, they get a notice that their financing will be cut off. At a certain moment, they will also get a letter stating what they owe and a proposal on how it should be paid back. Within that letter, it also states that arrangements can be made. So if it is not deemed a proper amount or if it is too high or whatever, you bring in your documentation and that can be reassessed and you will get a payment arrangement. I have not had any reports that they have had to send marshals after anyone, but just like with any other funds that are owed to government, I would assume that this can happen. If by the date, so they usually give, like if they receive the letter signed by the minister on, today is what, March 22nd, they would probably state a year from around now, or depending on when it was done, they usually get more than a year notice as to when they have to start to repay. So they would get that by 218 at some point, they would have to start repaying, or they would have come in to make a new arrangement, after which they would then get a new letter stating when they would have to repay and how much. So if they've gotten that far that people have received those letters and the date rolled around and they have not started to repay, then that is just a natural consequence of the steps that had to be taken.
Minister Jacobs, I think I need to get more specific. Based on the Facebook post and the person that is involved, they never had an agreement. There was no letter, but unfortunately, this person bought a car. The person finished studying, and apparently, because the person bought a vehicle and it was posted on Facebook, there goes the tax marshal coming after them for taxes, as well as scholarship payment that was not repaid, while there were no agreement, no letter sent by Department of Education, and the person had to pay back this amount of money within 2 days. That was what they were told by the tax marshal. So if you're not up to date with the situation, I'm now asking you, giving you a little bit more information.
Okay, as I said before, I didn't get any reports. I didn't read that report on Facebook myself, but I would like to advise whomever receives a letter or have not received a letter but received a notice from the tax department that it's due, they should go first to the tax department and then to the Division of Study Financing to find out where the lack of communication took place. Usually, the Study Financing Department would send it out to the last email address that they have from students. So if they've changed their email addresses, etc., in the meantime, it can happen that they didn't receive it. Students, I believe, upon receiving their ministerial decree stating that they've received, not I believe, I know, it states that it will have to be repaid at the end of it, and what percentage of it will have to be repaid, and that is a normal, you sign to that. You take the money, so this is the agreement that you basically have to repay it. So it is then your responsibility, if after a year or two you've finished, it's actually your responsibility as soon as you finish or terminate your studies to take contact with the division. We cannot let go of our own responsibilities as individuals. That's your responsibility. If you get a loan from the bank, when your bank your loan has to be repaid, it has to be repaid at the end of the day. And if you go and you post something on Facebook and somebody from the bank notice it, then that's how it is. I can't really say anything to that. What I do know is these things are done in conjunction with the finance department. So the same letters that the student receives, it goes via advice, and the finance department has it on record, so they know when it is due. I believe in the past there were errors made in that finance department looked at the entire amount that the student owed instead of the monthly payments. So I believe, based on the complaints that came in and the advice that was given to the students at the time, go to the finance department or the division for study financing to rectify that issue. And as far as I know, that issue was rectified. So the person in question who is questioning whether they owe or they don't owe, they just need to go and it's either a DIV, because DIV also distributes these letters. It's also either at DIV, the information, or at the Division for Study Financing. And they should always, when they have a question, take it first to the source.
But when I listened to your response, it now prompted me to ask you for further explanation. In your response last week, you told me that you are in discussion with the inspectorate, as well as SMMC is in discussion with the inspectorate, and the date will be pushed back. This led me now to ask you, does businesses, because you're talking also about the controls for businesses to be compliant and all such things, does other businesses or anybody else get to negotiate an audit? For example, if the police is coming to raid my house, would I get an opportunity to negotiate with them what you can look for and what you cannot look for? I mean, can you explain what the discussion is about?
Okay. First of all, the inspector has their authorities and their functions. The inspector can continue with those all the time. So it's not as if the inspector's not inspecting the hospital, right? So they can go in anytime and perform their tasks as laid out in the law. The inspectorate, in conjunction with the inspectorate from Holland, is looking at bringing in additional support. There's questions as to the scope, and the inspector has the authority to decide the scope. But there's also discussions about to what standards, to what parameters those inspections would be done. And as is the case in St. Martin, unfortunately, many of the pieces of legislation that are in place here are older and not clear. So a natural discussion takes place between the place being inspected and who's doing the inspecting as to what standards are you using. And I think that's a very healthy process for in particular for our healthcare institution, making sure that they're clear about to what standards they're being held to. And because the inspector has the right, I believe, to publish the findings, and so they want to be sure that the scope is clear. And I believe that's fair. When the tax department comes, or when the police would come, the rules are extremely clear as to, what basis they can enter your house, what questions they can ask, what things they can take. That process is extremely clear here. In this situation, there's some areas that are gray, and they're simply talking to each other to make sure they're understanding those. So I wouldn't see it as a negotiation. I see it as a mature conversation between two parties.
Thank you very much, Bibi, for your questions in this round. Andrew Dick, Daily Herald. Good morning. You have the floor.
Yes, good morning to all the ministers. Minister Boseman, concerning the airport, we haven't received an update for quite some time. Maybe you can give us an insight of the CEO, appointment of the CEO. Any discussions with the airport where that is concerned?
Yeah, no, I have no information to give at this particular time pertaining to that topic.
Okay. Minister Jacobs, the Lake School, the moving date was, I believe, on the 17th. It was moved again. I was told this would have been the 5th time that a moving had to take place. Is there any trouble with the construction right now?
As pertains to the Leonard Connor School, I believe in the last update I gave, the small maintenance issues that are plaguing all the schools, that was not part of what took place in the 4-5 weeks, where the contractor, Hemco, was given the opdracht, the assignment, to deal with the electrical and cabling to be able to run the air conditioners, etc. That upgrade has been done, so his contract has been properly finalized. However, some of the conditions in the school prior to that had been discussed with school and management that it doesn't make sense for you to have, for instance, broken windows and running air conditions. So it would make no sense to move in. They can move in, but there are some minor repairs that, to my understanding, should have taken place at the same time, but did not, and so therefore the delay. Last Friday, I was promised that the quotations, because it's a government job. We have to go through the process, and so that's what's taking a bit longer. They had to provide several quotations for the small work that still needs to take place, and hopefully this week they can start executing that. Hopefully. I haven't received the update as to, I know the quotations were gotten, but I haven't received an update as to when they will commence the works. I'm very much annoyed, as I'm sure everyone is in a situation, because for me, getting that big work done was tantamount to getting to start. And for me, efficient and effective work would mean that you carry out what you need to carry out simultaneously. So that wasn't the case, and this is what we have to live with. I'm trying not to be micromanaging everything and allowing the persons in charge to do what they have to do, but we'll be evaluating, and we're also looking at the maintenance schedules for all of the schools. There are several schools that need some other quick fixes as well. Some of the quick fixes had started at the Martin Luther King, but there are always other things going on that constantly need attention. As I mentioned earlier also, we are restructuring, looking at the restructuring of the operations of public education, as in the past it has been ascertained that a lot of the backlog and the time taken to do things is because of the organization falling within government itself. So we are taking steps to deal with that. That will take some time, but at least I now have the advice and we're moving forward. And just recently, I held meetings with the stakeholders within the ministry to deal with some of our concerns where teaching and learning is concerned. So it's a multi-prong approach that I'm taking to deal with some of the challenges that we are facing. It doesn't mean that nothing is happening. It means that some things are taking much longer than I myself had anticipated. Much to my chagrin, I'm not happy about it either. And I can't hide the fact that the school has apparently been finished, but it's not ready for occupation as yet. So hopefully by the month's end, hopefully, please don't quote me in saying that for sure, because I'm dealing with other people to carry out the works. So it has my attention, my priority, but of course, I'm not the one out there carrying out the work, so I can't guarantee the time at this present time. But I'm sitting on it.
Thank you, Minister. Also, related to education, the school leaving ceremony, I believe at the end of March, they were supposed to have a school leaving ceremony. Is that still set?
March?
Is March or June?
Who leaves school in March?
Oh, well, the school leaving ceremony, I was told, with all the schools, all the public schools, is that still on track? Because
I haven't been updated on that as yet. This is some, as I guess, operational things that happen within the school management and their team. I have my opinions on those which I will keep to myself at this time. Right now, my priority is dealing with the quality of education, that they are able to do their exams in such a manner that they can pass. I'm not that interested in a school leaving exercise, to tell you the truth. I would like us as schools, as educators, as parents and children to focus on the curriculum, focus on doing your best, especially with the upcoming season, because we've delayed the exams. We had a lot of complaints last year and the years before that the exams before happening in February, March, was too early, and then the students are, of course, you have a hard time keeping them actively participating in school after that, and it wasn't that they were doing it any better than they were before they were doing it after Carnival. So the schools are busy every year in each level preparing their students for achieving their objectives for the year. I would like us to focus on the deliverables. That's what I would like us to focus on, because that is in a state of disrepair. The State of Education report is not talking about school leaving exercises. Parents and everybody else need to focus on the 7:30 till when they get home, and making sure that when they're home, they follow up and that they have a good attitude in school, a good attitude in class, so that they can do their best to be the best that they can be. Getting your diploma is just a ceremony, and I'm sure one will be organized, but I would like the focus to be on education.
Andrew, thank you very much for your questions. Alita Singh, Daily Herald, you have the floor. Good morning.
Thank you, Cedric. Good morning, Ministers. Minister Gibson, on the issue of the central bank, what is the current status of Mr. Emsley Trump, and should he challenge the screening in court, how does that affect the process to fill the post of president?
As long as that process is not finalized, you will not be in a position to appoint someone else, because you need to take into account that the possibility exists that whatever decision that has been made can be overturned. So it will delay it as far as that position is concerned until that determination is made.
And his current status at the bank, is he back on the job?
No, he's suspended. He's still in the state of suspension. He's still in the state of he himself having stepped away, and under the bank statutes appointed a deputy president of the bank, and that deputy president of the bank is the one in charge of the bank.
Thank you very much. Minister Boseman, on the training process that you're planning to do for tourism, what's the cost, and how is that cost going to be foot?
Sorry. From what I understand, it is in the initial stages. Is not a big amount. I'm hearing amounts like $10,000, around $10,000 to $15,000, and like I said, it is a combination between this group who specialize in that customer service dedicated to tourism, and our own university that also have the hospitality section, and important the part about the history and the culture. So we would have to look how we combine that as good as possible. But it is by having this group, it is possible that you can get the FCCA certification, all right, and it is even looked at if the certification would enable someone to, or a badge or a pin, etc. For taxi drivers also, those who follow it, the ideas, and I throw it out now because we are embarking on it now. But for instance, a taxi driver that is that has followed that course and is certified may be able to get a sticker to put on their cab. The tourists, the guests, would be able to identify them, for instance, as one who have followed that. That hopefully would encourage others to participate. I mentioned that one association was there, but it is not limited to that association. It would be something that would be across the board. Everyone, so every taxi driver would get the opportunity to partake. You would not have to be a particular member of an association. Having said that, we got to realize that, especially like taxis, if you're talking about taxis, they're all, there are a number of associations. And those associations provide certain services for their members, just like any other group would do. And membership pay a fee to the association. It is not something that government is involved in. If someone chooses not to become part of a association, whichever one, and that association has negotiated or provided certain services and benefits for their members, then they should not complain. The whole idea is that we try across the board to improve our product. And as Minister Lee indicated, and Minister Jacobs, the education part of it is very important. That's a red line across everything that we do. And government's responsibility would be to make sure that those opportunities are there. But government, you know how they say you can lead the horse to the water, but you can't make them drink, okay? And especially adults. We can put a mandatory, what you call it, a compulsory education for minors. We can't force adults to partake in a training. And if they choose not to, then they should not complain if the benefits seen by those who participated are clear.
Thank you very much. Minister Lee, just a follow-up on your statement about the dental bus, also correlating together with the national health insurance. You've mentioned, of course, dental is not covered. Is that something that you're looking to cover? Of course, it's a tremendous cost to many in the community, especially for children. So,
It is something we're looking at. Like you said, the national health insurance, national health reform, the process is very much about balancing out the range and let's say, depth of care against cost. So it is one of the things that we're looking at, but have not made a decision as yet.
thank you.
Yeah.
Leader, thank you very much for your questions. Second round begins. Bibi Hart Shaw, keeping in mind we have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Minister Cedric. Minister Lee, going back to your answer, because there's still some unclear points. Last week, you said you, twice, were in discussion with the inspectorate also. You did not respond to that when I asked you for an explanation. And then also you said last week that the hospital is looking to get JCI accreditation. At the state of the hospital that is in right now, with all the calamities and everything like that, can you tell me if the hospital can get JCI accreditation as is of today?
So, first of all, I speak to many people.
Yes.
Speaking to the inspectorate, which falls under the Ministry of VSR,
Yeah.
is a normal thing. I don't think it's an abnormal thing to speak to the inspectorate. I've indicated that there was some tensions between the hospital and the inspectorate, and I think that everything I can do to bring peace to that and improve communications, I think that's fits in my job description. Regarding JCI accreditation, I've mentioned it is a aspirational goal. Number one, the hospitals that we're recommending that SZV is working with, the relationships that we're building, we would prefer to work with JCI accredited hospitals, so that means it's a internationally accepted standard. So when your protocols are put in place, that make sure that they coordinate well, that they are interrelated. So it is picking a standard to work towards. I mentioned that we're bringing in a consultant that will help to do the baseline study and to map out a plan for the hospital to become JCI accredited. The important thing is to begin the process, to agree on a direction where we're going. The time frame that it takes, I'm not sure how long it will take, because it depends on what the baselines show. But the expectation is that it's a process that will take time. And as we work towards a new hospital, remember, the new hospital is just a building, right? We want to make sure that the staff, the protocols, the procedures are also updated with the building. So this is all part of the process of improving our overall quality of care in the country.
Thank you, Minister Lee. Minister Gibson, I was approached by at least two contractors that provide services for government, and one of their complaints is that for years they're not being paid. They're trying to get their money and trying to avoid taking government to court. You speak a lot about having a balanced budget and able to balance the budget. What about paying the people that government owe? Can you tell us where we are?
There is a suggestion in that question that government doesn't pay what it's owed. I can assure you government pays what it's owed. There could be an array of reasons, and I'm not familiar with the specific cases that you're referring to because they were not brought to my attention. But you don't pay people unless you determine that you owe them. So that could be a process that will bring about a delay. You could have a dispute or an argument, and then of course you're not going to get paid what you said you want to be paid. It could be a dispute relative to, well, the scope of work that you said that you did, was it vetted? Did it go through the normal process in order to approve that work? I mean, there could be an array of reasons taken two persons who you talk, two contractors, and then ask me, you balance the budget, but what about government paying its debt, is suggestive in the way that I think brings about a negative intonation to a situation that you don't have all the details of, I don't have the details of, but I can assure you, the budget is balanced. There are processes to determine what is owed, and if what is required to be able to approve and make payment is not in place, it will not be paid. The only instance I can think of that somebody is not paid, besides the things I just mentioned to you, is that occasionally, for a short period of time, there could be liquidity problems. In other words, your cash flow is of such a nature that you have to wait a little bit to get in additional cash to be able to pay whatever is outstanding. I can assure you that's not the case today. I can assure you government has sufficient liquidity, and that could not be the reason also. So you need to be, how should I say, somewhat reserved in terms of accepting what people say without getting the details. I mentioned that specifically also in connection to a question that you posed to the Minister of Education, which you framed as the receiver or the marshal of taxes gave 3 days to collect monies that are owed for study financing. Well, the details are a little different. That might be part of it, but it's also part of it of someone running a business who didn't pay their TOT, who did not deduct salaries. So you need to tell the full story in order to avoid creating the wrong impression. There is more to it than just the things that you raise with the Minister of Education relative to this case. Thank you.
You mentioned what I read on Facebook.
Thank you very much, Bibi. Andrew?
Yes, just one question for the Minister of Finance. Minister, the outdoor emergency speaker system for the Department of Disaster Management said that for quite some time they are waiting for Finance Department to give them the funds in order to purchase a new system. They said that since last year it was approved, but until now they haven't received any funds for that.
Under whose ministry it falls?
The Minister of Finance is the one I'm asking the question.
Minister of Finance.
I'm asking a question to the Minister of Finance, yes.
Well, your question is being directed to the wrong person. You got to direct it to the ministry and the minister in charge of whatever infrastructure you're referring to. Because, again, it's a process you go through. It doesn't get to finance until the necessary advisors are prepared, goes to Comm, if it exceeds a certain amount of money, and then looking to see if funds are in the budget to be able to pay for something like that. So I understand a lot of people come and say, yeah, it's being held up by the Minister of Finance, because money is involved. But Minister of Finance do not get into action until the process that the item has to go through gets to finance. And it is not there.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Alida?
Cedric, thank you. Minister Gibson, just a follow-up on the central bank. This screening was carried out both by the VDC and the VDSM, both of the security services, the screening for the three?
No, the screening that St. Martin requested, because each country has to ask for a
Yeah.
screening. What I mentioned regards the screening from the St. Martin VDSM and their conclusion. The Curacao VDSM has not yet reached that point, but if one VDSM reaches the conclusion, then it affects both countries.